Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The American heavyweight Jared Anderson rolls on undefeated, advancing to 14-0 following a win over George Arias, whose corner retired him after the third round of their 10-round fight. So Anderson, after the fight, he said he was ready for the big names, that he wants the top names, he wants the top contenders, and he said, "I am the best heavyweight in the world. I'm different." And of his fight with Arias, he said he was focused and locked in, and that was despite a car accident which happened the day before in which he was involved in. So overall, it was a good performance, something a little bit different with George Arias, who's a smaller heavyweight, who can box and move Arias did in the first few rounds. He was trying to make it difficult for Jared Anderson, and you had Arias a little bit negative early, but then starting to open up from the second round, and he was actually landing a few left hooks. But Jared Anderson wasn't worried about anything that George Arias was throwing. He's only got a handful of knockouts in his 18 fights ahead of this one, or 7 I think it was, and Anderson knew that Arias didn't have the power to trouble him. So he kept pressing, he kept walking him down, and he was also southpaw for much of the fight, and ultimately, towards the end of the third round, he starts to catch up with George Arias. You could see that the uppercut was a punch that was starting to come into play, but he just landed a barrage of shots in the final minute, and ultimately you had George Arias stumbling to his own corner at the end of round 3 after the bell, and his corner was looking very hard at him. And they came and they said, "Look, this is it." But the decision to wave the fight off didn't come for another 20 or so seconds, and ultimately they said, "Nah, no more." Arias had a cut over his left eye, and ultimately, the end of that third round, he was looking worse for wear. He wasn't close to going down by the look of it, but he was certainly shaken up. And as he retired to his corner, or should I say, as he was coming to the corner, he did sort of wobble and stumble a bit. So another good win for Jared Anderson. He wants those top names, and actually, it probably is time for the training wheels to come off. How much is he getting from this level of opponent? George Arias is a decent fighter, make no mistake about it, but Jared Anderson is a cut above. And right from the outset here, with him throwing that hard jab, being patient, waiting for his opportunities, you knew it was just a matter of time. And so it was. So you have to ask the question, well, what next? Who next? And what sort of step will they take? So while you have Jared Anderson saying he's ready for the top names, ultimately, the way that they've built him, right fights at the right time, it will be another incremental step. To be honest, he needs to be starting to move towards top 20 level opponents. And I think someone who has worked within the top ranked stable that would fit that bill, who's just had a good win over Tony Yoka, is Carlos Takam. He's a good measuring stick for Jared Anderson right now. He's tough, he's durable, but someone like Anderson with his class and pedigree ultimately should be too good for Carlos Takam at this point in Takam's career. We've had signals from Takam that, look, I'm still here, I'm still dangerous, and you can't sleep on me. You have to come in here with your best to make sure you get past me. So I think that's an appropriate test, or something a little higher. I mean, this is the problem now that they're going to get with Jared Anderson. They're going to have him fronting main events, and they'll have to have him in with good opponents. So they're going to have to stick their hand in their pocket, and they're going to have to go the sanctioning body route, no doubt. So at the moment, Anderson has a few rankings in different sanctioning bodies. They're going to have to start getting him into title eliminators and such, because at a certain point, different fighters won't go in with him unless they're getting massively overpaid. And that's the sort of state and nature of the heavyweight division. And that's been it for some time. So they're going to have to maneuver Anderson into position. And at the moment, with the WBO, which is Bob Arum is close to and obviously can often get his way with, you have a different mandatory challenger at the top of the tree. He's also in the WBA rankings. And I think that there are avenues, but they're going to have to pull out their checkbook and get Anderson some meaningful fights, because you don't want him sort of stagnating. And I think we've seen with the most recent opponents, and actually maybe Arias was a slight step down from Jerry Forrest. I mean, arguable, roughly about the same. But at a certain point, you've got to take that next leap up above that sort of top 25 to top 30, 40 level. And he's ready for it. Clearly, he's ready for it. And actually, those opponents are likely to bring out the best in him. And we're going to really see what he's made of. Arias was good matchmaking. It was right fight at the right time. I know there's a couple of big George Arias fans, but he was a stepping stone. And he was the right stepping stone at the right time to the next thing. So, Jared Anderson gets a win after 3 rounds here against George Arias. What do you make of the performance, and what do you think of the what next? Because that's the question now. Can they keep him active? Can they keep him in meaningful fights? Remembering you've got a situation with the belts tied up and different mandatories for different champions, and you've generally got a number of fighters who are waiting their turn for a title shot. Probably not going to entertain Jared Anderson in the meantime. So it's an interesting question about the what next. There are certain guys that aren't with big name promoters or don't have TV deals. You could go after them, but you're going to have to pay. Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.